Welcome to the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Pluff. Each week, we will cover various topics that dads struggle with in their fitness journey. I'll give you actionable steps that you can apply right away, not only to take back control of your own health, but so you're able to be a better example for your kids too. All right, welcome into this week's episode of the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. Today we have Devon McCuen on. Devon's going to share with us a wide variety of topics from his knowledge of working in various fields, but I'm going to let him introduce himself and then we'll get started.
Hey guys, I'm Devon McCuen. I am a health and fitness coach, nutrition coach like Anthony as well. And he invited me on to share a little bit about my past history with alcoholism and coming out of that and kind of how it ties into the health and fitness stuff.
Yeah. And so that's kind of a topic, I've brought up a little bit on the show before, but not really too much. I think alcohol is something that has become very normalized in our society. And I say has become, I think it has been for, a very long time, and it can become a problem with a lot of people and they don't even realize it. And so obviously you have firsthand experience about that. So I'll kind of let you share your story and then we can go from there.
Okay. Sure. So when people think about with the stigma, alcoholics and addicts, often they think about, there had to be some trauma or some kind of history that led the person to be there. Right. And for me, that's just not the case. I grew up in an amazing family, had everything I needed and wanted and more. And, it just kind of progressed this way. I knew that when I took my first sip of alcohol at like 14 or 15, that I liked it. Right. And for the next, I guess it would be close to 20 years, my life kind of revolved around it. Mm-hmm. Through high school, I drank a lot, and but high school was the kind of thing where I was forced to show up by my parents, so I did just fine. Got a scholarship to college, went on a full ride to Carolina, and that's when things started getting a little hairy. Right, I didn't have someone there holding me accountable. Mm-hmm. Wasn't showing up for class. I did show up enough though to finish. It took me 5.5 years, and moved to Charleston, continued drinking more. Drugs did get involved a little bit, but that was never really my thing. It was always the alcohol, man. And I met my ex-wife in Charleston, working in Charleston, and we decided to move back to my hometown of Anderson, South Carolina in 2016 to open a restaurant with my parents. And I would say that's when I crossed that line. You'll hear a lot of alcoholics and addicts talk about crossing a line, and once you cross it, you could never come back. We went up there, and for about a year, we're opening the restaurant, and we had a lot of free time on our hands. That's when the morning drinking started. That's when the withdrawals from the night before waking up and shaking started. So I would drink to stop those. And it kind of progressed pretty aggressively from there. I can honestly say I don't remember 2016 through 2019 very much. I spent a lot of time in and out of treatment, detoxes, hospitals. This disease almost killed me. First couple treatment centers I went to, I went in with a desire to want to change, but I really went in with the mentality that if I just go through the motions, these people are going to fix me, and that's just not how it works with alcoholism. I like to say it was almost the perfect storm of when I got to my third treatment center in January of 2020, that I was so beat down and done with it that I got there and I was fully surrendered, right? I was like, whatever these people tell me to do, I'm going to do. And I was lucky in the fact that I pulled up that day, and these guys that I'm still friends with to this day, like almost talk to on a daily basis, they greet me. They're happy. They seem free, right? And I'm talking to them as they check me in, and at the time they had like 6 months or a year sober, and at the time that seemed unattainable to me.
Mm.
Um, but I wanted what these guys had, and I remember going in and sitting in the room. It was called A Room on the second bunk that day, and sitting down and just bursting out in tears, and feeling just completely hopeless because I wanted to change, right? I wanted to stop drinking, but on my own, I could not do it. I had been trying for the past 4 years, and I just could not control it.
Mm.
And I made the decision that night to take in everything that these guys at the time, the treatment center I was at, I say guys because guys and girls are separated.
Mm-hmm.
That these guys told me, right? And it just so happened that that night, when he's still one of my best friends to this day, was doing the 5 o'clock meeting that night, and I go in there with my notebook, ready to take notes and stuff, and he starts talking about things that finally made sense to me. He could describe to me how I felt. He could describe to me what my problem was, and he could describe to me a solution for that problem. And from that day forward, I my life has completely changed. I had to find what I learned was that it's for the alcoholic and addict. It is not the alcohol that's the problem. It is my perception of life. It is these terrible habits that I've built. It is these fears, these resentments that I'm holding. It is my approach to life and my perception of things around me that was flawed. And I had to fix that within myself. Took Like, people see me posting all this stuff on social media. I started about 3 years ago. They don't see the 2 years of work I put in before that, where I was completely silent.
Yeah.
I lived at that treatment center for 17 months. Like I said, it was the perfect storm of complete surrender and wanting to change something about myself that almost felt like an innate part of me. For an alcoholic, it is normal to drink. That is our normal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had to go in and look at these character defects of mine, right? What is it that about my perception of life and my personality traits that is causing itself to manifest as me basically drinking myself to death? I had to learn to recognize those things as they crop up and take contrary action to them, right? Learn how to live a different way. And that's a very short synopsis of my story. It got really bad, and now it's really, really good.
Yeah.
I have a new way to live, a new perception on life, and I'm grateful every day. I'm grateful for the suffering that I went through. I'm grateful that I'm an alcoholic, because without all that, without the personality change, or the some people call it a spiritual awakening that I had to have, without that, I wouldn't be where I am today. So that's kind of a brief synopsis of my story there.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you sharing that. I know that that's something that's very personal to you, but I know that not just dads in general, but men, women of all ages, a lot of times they struggle with these things alone, right? They go through these things where, you said you started drinking alcohol when you were in high school, or when you were young, and so this had obviously gone on for 20 years. You said. So at what point did you ever feel like you were the only one going through this, and when did you kind of realize that, like, hey, maybe maybe there are other people that are struggling with this too. And if I do open up about it, maybe I could help somebody.
It's tough because, yes, I absolutely felt like that. And it's super tough because if you're not an alcoholic or you haven't had a family member struggle with that in the past, it's impossible to understand,
Mm-hmm.
right? When an alcoholic says they don't know why they're doing what they're doing, 9 times out of 10, they mean that.
Yeah.
Like, alcoholics aren't bad people. They aren't purposefully choosing the drug or the alcohol over their family or whatever, but society mostly does make them feel like that, and it's
Mm-hmm.
unfortunate. I lost my wife because of my drinking, and she had every right to leave. Like, it's my life was consumed by it. She was
Mm-hmm.
protecting her peace. Um, my parents, God bless them, I mean, they did everything they could. The last part of it, the last 3 months of it, I was living with them and making their life a living hell.
Mm-hmm.
And it eventually got to the point, and I'm grateful for this. And my fiance now, she's in recovery too, will tell you the same thing about her parents. When they decided that, all right, this is enough, you're either going to be homeless or you're going to long-term treatment. It hurt, and I felt judged, and I felt like they were abandoning me, right? But them deciding to protect their peace and force me to go in and make a decision. All right, I'm either going to be homeless or I'm going to go give this another shot, and really, really try this time. Got me to that treatment center that day. The
Mm-hmm.
same thing for my fiance. They kicked her out, right? She ran for a few more years, but it eventually led to a place where we ended up in the right spot. So yeah, man, it is tough because so many people can go out on a daily basis or a couple times a week and drink with impunity and stuff, and they're like, why can't you just do that? Well, I don't know. I just can't. Um, Alcohol is especially tough because it is so normalized in society, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can have a drink and go about your day, um, and not ruin your relationships, not lose your jobs, and all that's not ruin your health, then by all means have a blast with it. But those of us that have crossed that line, however that came about, we're we're not immoral people, and um, we just crossed a line, and
Mm-hmm.
it can become back. You can come back from it, but um, often the addict and the alcoholic does feel, unfortunately, very shunned by society still to
Yeah.
this day.
Yeah. Have you had now? You said like obviously you grew up. You felt like you had really good parents, had a good support system and stuff. Did you watch other people struggle with this when you were younger?
Yes, kind of knowingly and kind of unknowingly, I've learned more about it as I've rebuilt the relationships with my family and stuff. It does run in my family.
Mm-hmm.
Both my grandfathers, one I didn't know at all. He died very young from this disease.
Mm-hmm.
The one grandfather that I didn't know, he died when I was 5 or 6. Um, my aunt, it suffered from this disease too. She just passed a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Amazing though, she got sober for like 7 years before she passed. Um, so it did run in my family, but I didn't have much direct interaction with it. No.
Mm-hmm.
So um, at the time when I first 2016, 2017, when I started thinking to myself, oh, this is an obsession, this is bad. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have anything to look at and say, all right, this is where this is going to take me, or this is where I'm going to end up if I keep doing this.
Yeah.
To me, it just felt, I knew it was wrong, but it felt normal, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's one of the hardest things too. Is like when we um, I've had family members too that have struggled with it, and we kind of think, maybe we're predisposed to these things, or is this just, does everybody struggle with it, right? And so,
Yeah.
and a lot of times, like I watched my dad's stepmom, my grandma, pass away at 60 years old from complications of this, and she, I didn't know. Like she obviously, like I feel, and I've had multiple family members on my wife's side of the family, same thing, and a lot of times we don't really know what someone is going through. And so I guess going back to when you were going through this, what could someone have done, or was there anything for someone to be able to help you? Like, obviously I know you said you had to come up with that, decision yourself, so it took you 3 times. Right. And I feel
Yeah.
like, that's very common to hear someone that the first time they go, for some people it really does work. Right. And it
Hmm.
helps, and they can move forward. But unfortunately, seems to be a lifelong issue, or something that it's a long-term issue. And so
Yeah.
could somebody have potentially helped you, or was that a decision you felt like you had to make on your own?
Honestly, I don't think anybody could have told me anything, right?
Mm.
Um, that's one of the major character defects that most, if not all, alcoholics share is an extreme. We call it self-will run riot, right? And that's something that you have to overcome. We think that, like I said, we think that what we're doing, even though we may know it's weird or bad, or not everybody else is doing it, it's normal to us. So when people come at us and tell us, this is bad, we may, okay, yeah, it's bad, but I'm not
Yeah.
stopping, because this is what you'll hear a lot of alcoholics and addicts say, that they feel so uncomfortable in life, right? They don't feel like they fit in, and
Yeah.
their drug of choice makes them feel that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was absolutely true for me. Um, I I still struggle with like discontentment and uneasiness a lot. I have a program and stuff I can deal with that now, but it was nagging back then, right? And when I drank, that went away,
Yeah.
right? So for somebody to, it's tough, because we want people to help us, but they can't, and we're often not going to take the help.
Right.
What it often takes is somebody that has been through it, right? That was
Mm.
the game changer for me. The first 2 treatment centers I went to, and doctors and therapists, they try their hardest, right? They try their best. But this is a very, very confusing disease for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
When I got to the 3rd treatment center, everybody that worked there was in recovery. There were
Okay.
examples of, this is how you can live a life of freedom, right? It's going to take complete surrender, but um, and that's why I think that for an alcoholic or addict, working with somebody that has been there is so important, because the ones that haven't, we get that feeling of judgment, even though they may not be judging us.
Mm.
Like those doctors and therapists that have made a decision to work with alcoholics and addicts, no doubt in my mind, they truly care,
Yeah.
but it's hard for us to see that.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's so much harder for them to get through to us than somebody that comes to you and says, hey, I was a fentanyl addict for 10 years. Now I love my life. This is how we did that. Let's try some things with you and see if we can make this work. It gives you a little bit of a feeling of acceptance, and like what we talked about earlier, feeling a little judged and stuff like that. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you get that from it. And that was the big aha for me.
Yeah. And I hear that a lot, especially, one of my uncles struggled with this for, most of his life. His dad, my mom's stepdad, actually passed away before I was born, due to alcoholism and stuff. And my uncle struggled with this for years, and he was in recovery, and he was helping teach other people as well. And that is something like what you said there it takes somebody going through it in order for
Mm-hmm.
somebody currently going through it to actually understand what's going on. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why, I asked you to come on here, because this is a topic where, we could probably all sit down and make a list of people who struggle with this right now.
Mhm.
And then that list is probably going to be so much bigger, because there's a lot of people going through it that we have no idea. They haven't been able to come to terms with it. And I remember you mentioning earlier where you said, you took a drink and it made you feel more accepted. It made you kind of feel more at peace. And obviously the alcohol, a drug of somebody else's choice, is going to fill a need, right? They're doing it
Mhm.
for you wouldn't keep taking it if it wasn't solving a problem. But
Right.
then, the solution becomes the problem. And so now,
One hundred percent.
it's been 5 years, right, since you've been sober now. And so how have you helped kind of fill that void?
For me, it was a lot of I have to find peace in just living life. I have to be able to find joy and fulfillment in little things, right? Life doesn't have to be full. It's getting to a point where you realize life doesn't have to be full of all these extreme feelings of wellness and awesomeness all the time, right? Um, so for me, it was a lot of learning to practice gratitude and acceptance in life on life's terms, and realizing that every moment that we have, I'm big on living present, living in the moment, is a blessing. And if you choose to wake up and see it every morning, right? I wake up and I may not always wake up and be stoked for the day, but I can reset my day and choose to look at it that way, right? It is a
Mm.
choice for me now. Um, so instead of like reaching for that alcohol to fulfill me, to be on some little fun little journey with the booze, right? I choose to reach outwards into life, right? And put back into life,
Mm-hmm.
so that every single little moment that I'm going through can be its own little journey and its own little escapade in itself, right? Um, Now, of course, and there are things that I put in place in my day to that make me feel fulfilled, right? That I like doing. The main thing I try to do is find joy in every little moment.
Mm-hmm.
But things like the discipline of going to the gym, right? Still staying connected in the recovery community, like going to meetings and going to chair meetings and going to commencements of treatment centers that my fiance is a part of. And then, just rekindling and making more important the relationships that I burnt down.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll find any reason to go on a trip with my fiance or go see family or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, those things, um, the discipline of the, exercise, rekindling old relationships, and then finding peace in every little moment.
Mm.
That's what I've filled my life with. And I wouldn't want to live any other way now.
Yeah. Yeah. And you said, staying connected to, the community, right? The community that helped you, have your life back, right? Now,
Mhm.
when it comes to like fitness, nutrition, a lot of times people will hire a coach and they will see great results working with them one on one. Your clients will come work with you, and then they go out on their own, and that accountability fades, and all of a sudden the results start fading. And so for you, is this something, being involved in that community, is this something you feel now that you've, kind of gotten back to where you want to be, is being involved in that community something you feel you'll need to do the rest of your life?
Yes. And I will honestly say that it's not something that I always want to do.
Right.
It's part of that. Like I have to wake up and reset my day a lot
Yeah.
to see the goodness in it. Like there are some people like my fiance, she loves going to do that stuff. Like she eats it up. That's not always the case for me,
Mm-hmm.
but I can 100% say with 100% certainty that every time I do it, I feel better about my circumstance, right? I'm able, me being 5 years into this thing now, like I'm able to share my experience, strength, and hope with somebody that's newer in it, and I can get something from them. And then I see the people that are further along than me still kicking and still showing up to meetings. You have to have that sense of altruism for this stuff and wanting to help others. That's a big part of this. There's nothing, there's truly nothing like the fulfillment you can get from altruism, which means helping others, right? That is a big part of my program that I work now. And there's nothing like the sense of fellowship and feeling like, okay, I'm not alone in this stuff. I'm not always wanting to go seek it, but I do. It's a discipline thing. Like it has to be with health and fitness and all that stuff. Like I don't always want to show up, but I'm in a point now where I know that this is just something that Devon has to do for the rest of his life. So I'm going to show up knowing, playing the tape through in my head that, all right, I may not want to go do this right now, but once I do, I'm going to get that little sense of fulfillment or re-urgency for recovery and sobriety and stuff. So we keep showing up, man, and we're going to continue showing up. God willing, right? Like I'm sober today. Can't guarantee I'll be sober tomorrow, but I can get a little bit more insurance, right?
Right.
By showing up for those that need me and showing up for myself too, right? It's got to be a little bit selfish with this stuff. I know I need it, so therefore I go do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you've so obviously you have your own, fitness nutrition company right now. You're working with clients. You mentioned before we started recording here that after you were in recovery, you started working in addiction recovery as well, right? And so, if you don't mind, just kind of telling us a little bit about how that process is. How do you go from the process of being a patient to being the one helping others, and then how you went from there to getting into health and fitness?
Okay, so the treatment center that I went to, that I got sober at, was a place where you can go. It was a 3-month program. And after your 2 weeks, you get a job. I got super lucky in the fact that I had come off owning a restaurant, or still owned a restaurant at the time, and they needed kitchen help, right? And so on my 8th day there, I started working in the kitchen. Didn't want to, because, I had been working in my restaurant and drinking myself to death, but they asked me to. And when they ask you, say yes. Because I knew these people that were asking me were doing something right. So let's humble myself and let's do what I need to do. So I started working at the treatment center on my 8th day there. Now it wasn't a paid, at the time it wasn't paid. I was just paying my rent there. And eventually, like I said, I lived at the treatment center finished the 3-month program, decided to stay on as alumni. And eventually I ended up becoming the kitchen manager there. I did that for close to, I think, like 4 years, almost 4 years. I can't say that I loved it, right? I didn't want to be in the kitchen, but I knew it was good for me, and I knew it was going to lead to sustained recovery and building relationships and stuff like that. When I got sober, like fitness had always been a big part of my life when I could stay sober. Like my mom is someone that goes to the YMCA in Anderson almost every day of her life. And I saw that in her, and I started going to the gym. Obviously the alcoholism took me out of it a lot. But as soon as I got to the Owl's Nest, the last treatment center, they have a little weight pit outside, and just weights in mud, basically. I was out there every single day. and I started getting I got my phone back. I was able to use the internet and stuff like that. And I started, it gave me something to work on and obsess over, kind of, to take up my spare time. So I started studying this stuff as much as I could. I started working on myself. When I went into the Owl's Nest, I went through periods of my alcoholism where I'd get really fat, right? I got up to like 230, 240, 240 pounds. This time when I went in the Owl's Nest, though, I was at the point in my drinking where I was not eating at all, just living on vodka. So I was like 165, 170 pounds, which is small for me when I got there. But within the first 3 months, I was back up to my normal 195, 200 pounds. People kind of started asking questions, right? What are you doing? Can you show me some stuff? Can you help me with my fitness stuff? So I did. My first venture into that was, she was my friend at the time. Now she's my fiance. Her name's Elle. She's in recovery for fentanyl and crack addiction. She has almost 5 years herself, and she came into the Owl's Nest at probably 90 pounds, and in her first year of recovery got up to over 200. So she's like, will you help me? I did. We got her down to where she's at now, like 145. Right. People saw that. My first client ever, I say client because he's like, let me hire you. I didn't let him pay me. He runs the store there. Mr. Bill, he wouldn't mind me saying his name. We took him, and this was over the span of like a year and a half, but I took him from like 310 to 180 or so.
Okay.
And then I just slowly, people saw that and they're like, what the hell is going on? And I started, we were sitting there one night. She's like, why don't you start a business? So I had no idea what I was doing, right? I got on, and this is how I used to do it. I'd get on Twitter, and I put a little post together, screenshot it, and then crop it, because I didn't know how to use Canva. I didn't know how to use any of these tools that we use now. And I just put out on Instagram and Facebook, hey, I'm going to start taking clients for fitness and nutrition. Holler at me. And that's basically how it started. I started with 1 or 2 clients, and then eventually 12 or 13 or so, and now we're rocking with 40. It's taken 3 years to get to this point, and as you know, hiring a mentor for it, and but like I say, it was a perfect storm. None of this, I wouldn't have this business. I wouldn't have everything that I have today if it wasn't for my recovery, going through that, learning what I learned in the process, and the people that it put into my life. Because I don't think I ever would have started the business if Elle wouldn't have said, why don't you do it? Because if you go back on my socials before I made that first post, I didn't post on social media at all. That just was not me. Like getting on a podcast before it, like that's not something that I'm willing to do. The recovery process and the fellowship there and the encouragement there, and it taught me so much about myself and how to be willing to be uncomfortable and try something. And it led me here, man. And the obsession has become an amazing career. And I'm lucky that I get to work with a lot of amazing people, a lot of which happen to be in recovery too. So we get to talk about that stuff too. Most of them aren't, but a lot of them are. And it's super cool to be able to help them in this process too. Because this is a huge part of my recovery, is my maintaining my mental health and my physical health, right? I've got to do those things. And like I said, it was a perfect storm that just kind of progressed naturally.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I think that's really cool. Kind of, I mean, maybe indirectly, but like, the alcohol was keeping you from who you needed to be, right? You
Hmm.
you weren't able to fulfill, the potential of who you were becoming. And I think it's very common for a lot of people to, you have a stressful day at work, you get home, and you have dinner and you crack open a beer, right? One leads to two, two leads to
Hmm.
three, and three leads to, I'm falling asleep and I'm waking up, and then we start the process over again. And I think a lot of times people try and balance the two where, hey, I'm hitting my calorie goal, I can throw in a couple beers, right?
Hmm.
I'm doing this, and like you're just making things much more difficult on yourself. And so for your clients in particular, and for anyone, how do you go about that? How do you find that balance where, sure, a couple beers here and there are probably okay, but most people don't just have a couple beers here and there, right?
Yeah.
We try and get out of it. We try and, I try and teach my clients to get out of that all or nothing mentality. Like, we can either have everything or we can have nothing, right? But when it comes to alcohol, sometimes it is really hard, right, to have
Yeah.
just a little bit of it. And so, what do you do specifically to work with your clients to kind of balance that?
I think it's important for the clients that do drink and maybe drink a little bit in excess, to understand what is actually happening when they do that, right? A lot of people just think that it's if you're trying to lose weight, it's just yes, it is just calories in, calories out that matters for fat loss, but alcohol causes other things to happen that can affect that, right? It
Mm-hmm.
messes with your sleep. Um, if you drink in excess, it causes you to make less than mindful decisions, around food later in the night.
Yeah.
Um, cause you to be hungover, dehydrated the next day, worsening your performance in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of clients don't really understand that part of it. They're like, well, it meets my calorie allotment. I'm good. Well, for fat loss, probably so. But if you're drinking in excess, if you drink much more moderately, those other things are going to get in line too.
Yeah.
And then if it's somebody that's just having one here or there, that's fine. But if you can just have one here or there, you really don't need that either, right?
Yeah.
So it's about having those conversations with people so that they understand what what is causing physically to happen,
Mm-hmm.
and hoping that they can get to a point where they understand that and they can begin to make decisions around alcohol a little more mindfully, whatever they may be. If they
Mm-hmm.
choose to still drink, so be it. But make that decision mindfully, right? Make that decision to do that mindfully, knowing the effects that are going to happen because of that. And don't, you know, show yourself some grace and don't beat yourself in the butt because
Yeah.
things aren't happening like you want them to happen because you made that decision mindfully, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's kind of the way I approach it. Right? Let's understand what's actually going on, and let's work on your mindset around it. If you're going to do it, make the decision mindfully. If you can work on not doing it, then that's pretty badass. Like, I was obsessed over alcohol, and I um, haven't had a drink in over 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think about it at all anymore. And for somebody that just drinks casually, it's much easier to do.
Right.
Um, but again, if you're just drinking casually, it's okay. Just make the decision mindfully and be aware of what's
Yeah.
going on with your body because of that.
Yeah. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I've always been under the impression that alcohol is not really the problem. It's a symptom of
Yeah,
a bigger problem. And you
100%.
you mentioned earlier, like, yeah, you're trying to fill a void. You're trying to you have these other things going on internally with you. And so I think I think a lot of times when people do, at least for my clients, when they hire a coach and and they're start tracking their food, this may be the first time where they actually realize how much they really are drinking, and they realize they're looking at MyFitnessPal, they're looking at whatever food tracker they're using, and they're like, well, shoot,
Yeah,
this is something I'm eating. And that's the same thing with food, right? You think you're eating the the biggest lie I ever told was I eat really well, right? And it's like
Mhm.
we start tracking things, we understand what's going on, and the same thing goes for alcohol. If you're honest with yourself, I mean that's a good thing. If you're being honest, you're tracking your actual alcohol intake, but it can be really eye opening, right? Because I think that's where the awareness comes on, and like you said there, if you are choosing to drink, be mindful of it, right?
Mhm.
Understand what's going on. If you're having a couple drinks every once in a while, not that big a deal, but we have to figure out how can we prevent it from being a couple drinks a few times a week to a couple drinks every single evening.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, people, I like to think of, or I don't like to think of it is the forgotten macronutrient, right? There's 7 calories per gram of alcohol, um, and I, we all know that our wine pours, people's wine pours aren't what they're supposed to be, right? You may think you're getting your 4 or 5 ounces of wine, but
Yeah.
once you actually measure that stuff and look at it, most people are pouring like double glasses, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that's where, as you get into the night a little further, that mindlessness stops happening. You're like, oh, what's one more? What's one more? What's one more? And that stuff adds up
Yeah.
really quick. And then you wake up hungover, dehydrated in the morning. You skip a workout. You start beating yourself up, so you're stressed. Like it just kind of snowballs from there. And
Yeah.
that's a big thing I work on my clients though is mindfulness with it all.
Mm-hmm.
It can, with the entire picture, it can make such a big difference in slowing down and thinking about these things, playing the
Yeah.
tape through, like I said earlier. um, that's absolutely huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the mindfulness around, the size of your drink is important. Like
Hmm.
I remember um, when my wife and I were in Mexico on our honeymoon, we had these desserts there, and they would bring out the dessert, and I don't know, they seemed really small to me, and we were eating them, and I was like, man, why are these so small? And then it kind of clicked with me. I was like, this is probably what an actual serving size of dessert is, right? We don't need these huge. And the same thing goes for alcohol, right? What's actually a serving size of what we actually eat? Like all our portions here are huge. I had a professor in college tell me she was from Mexico. She told me the closest thing that she ate from home from where she was Chipotle, but our portions are just so big, and so
Yeah,
I think that carries over to everything. It carries over to food, carries over to alcohol, carries over to everything. What we think is normal is actually kind of blown out of proportion there.
100%. And like I like what you just said. What we think is normal, and that's a big part of all of this stuff, right? Like we're talking about alcoholism and fitness, right? We we all have these things in us that are almost like innately part of us that we feel are normal. But a lot of times these things are holding us back from where we see ourselves or where we want to be,
Mm.
right? And if we can work to recognize these things that we see as normal that are holding us back,
Mm.
whether it be your 3 times a week cocktail nights or your bowl of ice cream every night or your just general overall laziness or even fear of the gym or fear of change, any of those things are kind of part of us now. If we can work to recognize those and work to set slowly new normals into place, take contrary action to those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's how lasting change with all this stuff is made, right? It's not, all right, let's take the booze out and not work on your mindset around it. It's not, let's eat 1,200 calories and go walk on a 2 hours treadmill a night and lose 20 pounds real quick. It's about what are the things that are innately in us that are keeping us from doing that. Let's recognize those and let's make a change in those things
Mm.
over time, slowly, so that these changes we want to see, whether it be drinking less or getting in better shape, become the things that are now part of us. That's the big aha, at least in my eyes.
Yeah, no, I think that's really great, and I think that's a really great summary to kind of everything, you've been talking about here. Just, taking it slow, changing the way you're viewing yourself, viewing other
Mm-hmm.
things, and, actually solving, the real problem and not just dealing with the
The
symptoms there.
symptoms. Yeah.
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 Well, Devin, this has been a really great episode, and I really appreciate you coming on here. I know sometimes, and maybe it's gotten easier for you now. It's been 5 years, but it's probably still difficult at times to open up and share about these things. And so
Oh, for
I know
sure.
I really appreciate that, and I know those listening to the show appreciate that as well. Before I let you go here, what's one big takeaway, or what's one action step, I guess, that someone could start applying to their life right now to start making those changes if they are struggling with alcohol?
I think the biggest thing is going to be acceptance, right? Admitting to yourself and fully conceding that you have a problem with it or something that you'd like to change. If it's not necessarily alcoholism and you're probably just drinking so too much, you have to truly accept that about yourself. You can't just say, oh, I know I need to change, but it's really not that bad. You have to really come in and say, all right, this isn't great. I accept that this is a little bit of a problem, and then be open about it. That's the hard part, is being open about it. You have to communicate it, because there are people out there that can help you, and there are
Yeah.
people that would love to help you. But we're really good at hiding it and stretching
Right.
this thing out over years when it doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
So if you can accept that about yourself, truly believe it, and know that it's okay, it's not your fault, then speak up about it. There are people that will help. I'm one of them. Message me. There are people that will help. It's truly about acceptance, and then from there, that's when the change can start. But if you don't accept it about yourself, it's really hard to change.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Thank you so much for coming on here again. Where can people find you on social media, or yeah, where can people find you online to follow you?
So I'm at Devon McCuen on Instagram
Okay.
and Devon McCuen on Facebook. Those
Okay.
are the two main places I use.
Awesome. Awesome. I will get those links and I will put them in the show notes. But once again, man, thank you so much for coming on here and being so open and vulnerable. We really appreciate it.
Of course, Anthony, it was a pleasure.
That concludes this episode of the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. Thank you for those of you who took time out of your busy schedules to listen. If you have any questions or comments or an idea for a topic for a future episode, please feel free to reach out, and I'd love to hear from you.